Okay, welcome to our vision notes part 2. We stopped our last notes looking at the structure of the eyeball. So here's where we left off, looking at the different components of the eye, the outer protective layer, the cornea. Right behind that you have your iris, which is our colored part, the pupil, which is the part that lets all the light in, and then the lens is our focus, right? So it focuses that light onto the fovea, which is on the back of our eyeball and the retina. Okay, and then the last thing I talked about is that you have this blind spot where the optical nerves leave to go to the brain's visual cortex. So we're going to actually map back the pathway that nerve takes going to other parts of our brain. So here's I think I showed you this slide, but again, we're looking at the brain from the top, like cut in half. Okay, so we're going to look at how visual information goes from our eyes to our brain and how we there make sense of what's going on in our visual field. Okay, so you're going to label these parts. So remember we talked about the back of our eyeball here. This is our retina, and then the retina has nerves that leave via the optic nerve, so neurons that leave via the optic nerve going out the blind spot. And I want you to look at the colors here. Okay, so actually let me go back. So the colors here, so right here you have your pink and then your black, and over here you have your black and your pink. And then all the black nerves here that leave go back, so if you're looking this way, it's going to the left side of your brain. Okay, so over here, if I want to draw it, so this is going to be the left side, and then over here all the pink ones are going to the right. Remember how we talked about in class that there's some overlap in our visual fields, and that we put our fingers here and we kind of moved them back and mapped out our visual fields. But that most of the time that it's overlap. So even if we have something that's blocking our left visual field, our right eye makes up for it a little bit. Okay? All right, so those optic nerves go back. They cross at something called the optic chiasm, which is going to be right here. I'll have you label that later. So that's where they cross, remember? So we took our fingers right here and we crossed them here because it goes to opposite sides of your brain. And then when they cross, they go back to the visual area of the thalamus. Remember, the thalamus decides where all that sensory information is going to go. Okay, so when it gets to the thalamus, remember we talked about the thalamus shoots up and it can go to the visual, the auditory, and our other somatosensory areas. So after it goes to the thalamus says, that is vision. That needs to go to my visual cortex, which is back here in my occipital lobe. Okay, so it's going from the eyes, the optic nerve, crosses to the part of the visual area in the thalamus, and then goes back to my visual cortex. That's the pathway of the visual cortex. Now here's some things you need to know about that pathway, or the path from which light goes from my eyes to my brain. First of all, that the axons are what are actually traveling back, that go back to the optic nerve. So it's a really long axon. So think about learning about our cells or our neurons. The axon is that part that comes off of the cell body, and it goes back, and then it terminates, or the neurotransmitters come out at the terminal buttons. All right, so think about how long that axon has to be to go all the way back in your brain. Now, what I just said before with that diagram, so I have half of my optic nerves that cross into the opposite hemisphere. All right, remember that's what we drew the pink and the black nerves, and they synapse onto the LGN, and that's short for the lateral geniculate nucleus. And you need to know that the LGN synapse onto other primary visual cortex. So the LGN, the lateral geniculate nucleus, and those neurons then synapse onto our primary visual cortex. Remember when we talked about our axons, we've got our cell body our cell body here. This is our axon, and then we have our terminal buttons that come off here. So when it says that it synapses onto our primary cortex, that means that it ends here onto our primary cortex. All right? So I have axons that travel all the way back, and they synapse onto my LGN, and then my LGN axon synapse onto my primary visual cortex. All right, so looking at different parts of vision. So You might wear glasses, or your parents wear glasses for reading or for seeing far away. So you need to know the different types of things that can go wrong with vision in our eyes. All right, so we'll talk about why vision can go wrong in our brains, but let's talk about just our eyes. If you are farsighted or nearsighted, that means that either your focus is either going too far on your back on your retina or too near on your retina. So this would be a normal vision. So I have my candle here and it's projected to the back of my retina, and everything is going to be in proportion. So if you are farsighted, you can kind of remember it's the opposite, then you are unable to see things that are close to you. So you can actually see like there's a misshapen of the eye here. And what happens is then your lens focuses it on the retina, and it's too small. So things, if you're farsighted, you can see things far away but not close up, so you need glasses to read. If you are nearsighted, that means that you can see things that are near but not things that are far away. So what happens is, see, look at the image here. It's focused just a little bit off. So nearsighted, I can see things near, but I can't see things that are far away. So I need glasses to see things in the distance. And the normal vision is when that lens projects something onto the retina perfectly. Okay, so what does that have to do with, so what that it's moving from my eye to my optic chiasm and crossing over to my thalamus and then to my visual cortex. There's certain areas in your visual cortex that are responsible for identifying features, all right? So you actually use different parts of your occipital lobe in your visual cortex for different features or objects. So there's an area in your visual cortex, in your occipital lobe, that's responsible just for recognizing faces, all right? So putting things together. There's so think about the difference between like a face, a house, and a chair, and then like the shapes and like the contours and what things might mean on a face. And then so look at the areas that are for houses, chairs, and more structural objects. Okay, so those aren't all put in the same place in our brain. We'll talk more about feature detections a little bit later in parallel processing, but what I want to know for the extent of this notes is that your visual cortex is not all the same, that there's areas that are dedicated for certain functions, such as detecting features or detecting motion, and we'll talk about that later in our vision notes.